Welcome, and welcome to you, Richie. Thank you so much for coming and for being willing to participate in this interview process for the Berkeley Parents Union.
Thank you.
Based on the role of a school board director, we have designed these questions to better understand your past experience, demonstrating the characteristics, behaviors needed to be an impactful school board member. In the responses, like I mentioned before, please be sure to fully answer the question and to provide specific examples as often as you can. Okay?
Will do.
So my name is Ann Caligari, and I am sitting down today with Rachie Lee, and Rachie is going to give us more of an introduction of herself. Rachie?
Hi, Ann. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Rachie Lee, and I'm a mom of two kids. I have a 6th grader at King and a 4th grader at Rosa Parks. I was a former foster youth attorney in Alameda County, and most immediately I was the Director of Academic Achievement and Associate Dean of Online Education at Golden Gate University.
Oh, busy.
I'm also the, before I forget, it's related to the city, I'm also a commissioner on the City of Berkeley's Peace and Justice Commission.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm going to get started. We have 10 questions for you, and I'm going to get started with an easy one. So I think, right? So how would you describe the needs of the whole child experience in BUSD?
Thank you for asking that. The needs of the whole child is both academic, social, emotional, as well as cultural. Okay. When I think about even, kind of myself and my own family, and the raising our kids, we focus on their academic achievement and how well they're doing in their classes and whether they need any support there. But we also, want to ensure that they're enriched as human beings so that they grow up to be strong and capable and empathetic citizens. And so in order to be that, they have to have a very strong social and emotional identity. Part of one's identity is also their cultural identity, and that's of, really, really significant importance to my family. So when I think about the whole child experience for every child in BUSD, no matter what their background is, it is academic, social, emotional, and cultural, racial and cultural.
Okay. Okay, I'll go on to the next question.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me examples of how you've worked to support students, children, and teachers in the past. How will you use this experience as a board member to ensure students' needs are placed at the center of BUSD's decision making?
Okay, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about my background because I think that highlights what I've done for students and families as well as teachers, and that I could talk a little bit more specifically about what I'm currently doing now. Okay, and so as a foster youth attorney, I represented children from 1 day old to 21 years old. And when you represent their interests, it's not only their, albeit very important, but it's not only their permanency and safety interests, you're also advocating for them in terms of their educational interests, their physical interests, their mental health. And so as a foster youth attorney, it really gave me the opportunity to see how certain systems that were really meant to help sometimes can end up hurting instead. And so that really changed my life. Doing that work really opened my eyes. When I was a Director of Academic Achievement and Associate Dean of Online Education at Golden Gate, really that's just a fancy way of saying I helped students. I helped students succeed because my department that I oversaw help struggling students do better in school. And sometimes those students, have been struggling, for many, many years before they get to graduate school. And, for one reason or another, they didn't diagnose what they had, or, they didn't get the support that they need, or they kind of kept it to themselves. But it all kind of came to a head in graduate school. And so that experience also made me realize, how much more we can do, as educational institutions, as a society, to support our young people, so that they can grow up to be productive and happy adults. What I'm currently doing now, I'm sorry, one more thing I want to talk about is, I'm really proud of the fact that I was one of the parent founders of a school called West County Mandarin School. It's a district school in West Contra Costa Unified School District, our neighboring district. And we, as a parent group, with the support of the superintendent at the time, went through the process with their school board to get a brand new school approved in that district. And so it's about 5 or 6 years in the run, in operation, and it's doing really, really well. I believe it has a waiting list, even though the district itself, like many districts, is experiencing declining enrollment. And what I am the most proud is that 1 out of every 2 seats is reserved for a child who's at a disadvantage, whether it's low income, they qualify for free or reduced lunch, or they're homeless or foster youth. And so 1 out of every 2 seats is reserved for that student. Additionally, about 30 to 35% of the students currently being served are Black students and Latino students who are learning Mandarin, as well as all the other subjects, and really accessing a skill that they would normally not have been able to access, bring opportunities to them, and also bring teachers into that district, right? To be a district teacher, but to also be teaching in such an innovative and exciting program. That school is, I believe, in the process or has already been approved as an IB, International Baccalaureate School. And so I share all of that because I stand for equity. My career has been about helping students, helping teachers. I want to talk about that latter point a bit. I was chair of the school site council, where I had the opportunity at Rosa Parks Elementary, where I had the opportunity to look at how we were spending money, and where the money was going, to what programs, and to what groups of people supporting those programs. And what I realized, was that we, for example, are not supporting many of our teachers in giving them, the tools that they need, because we saw teachers still asking for grants for, things that I feel like they should just automatically be able to have in their classroom, right? The things that I guess are considered extra, but really when you look at it, really are not extras. These are things that really should be just a given. Additionally, I saw how poorly paid, to just be blunt about it, poorly paid some of our after school staff were being paid. And I really advocated for an increase in pay, for permanency for them, because I knew that, if there was it would be hard to get those people back. They were so dedicated to the job, it would be hard to get them back if we lost them. And I remember talking about this right before COVID hit, and then COVID happened, and that's exactly what happened. And we lost all of that staff, and we didn't give them a reason to return. And so I am committed as a school board member, given the lens that I have, to bring equity for not only our students and families, but for our teachers and staff as well.
Wow. Thank you. I'll go on to the next question.
Okay.
Name recent examples of advocacy, and it sounds like it runs right into what you were saying, of advocacy and outreach you've led or actively participated in at the local, city, and state level.
Okay.
We've already started it.
Okay. Yeah. And I think, you know, advocacy comes in different forms, right? Advocacy sometimes comes in the form of just your daily interactions, your daily work, you know, and right down to the school site, you know, as well as district level and all those other levels. And so, you know, you've heard about some of my on the ground, you know, kind of school site work. I'm also really proud to be a member of our newly formed anti-racism steering committee. We've had some amazing consultation by Ms. Pam, who is a
That's
district.
Pamela Harrison Small?
Yes. Who is a well-known consultant around race and equity issues, and so we've had the benefit of some of her teachings, and now it's about implementing it at the school site. And I know other schools are doing similar projects, but you know, what I would like to do is going forward is to actually bring some of those efforts together, because sometimes school sites spin their own wheels, but we don't know what each other are doing, and I think we could do a better job to coordinate. But anyhow, I'm really proud to be part of that effort. Some immediate things that come to mind, I was the organizer of a Stop Asian Hate march after the Atlanta shootings in, I think it was 2021. There were a huge spike in violence against Asian Americans, particularly Asian American elders. And I really wanted to speak up about that. So I organized a march around that effort. And that was a wonderful opportunity to get young people involved, college folks involved, you know, really, you know, everybody in the community to really come together to stand against hate. I'm also on the Peace and Justice Commission on the City of Berkeley, and what we do there is pretty broad. We can look at all sorts of things, you know, but some of the commonality with our efforts is around social justice. And so some of the recent things that I've been a part of in advocating for is climate literacy at our district. I know that we passed a climate literacy resolution, but the Peace and Justice Commission also supported the city of Berkeley passing a resolution to support that effort, and also to support a state bill around having enough funding, you know, to support climate literacy. It's one thing to say we support it, but it's another thing to have
to support it.
Yeah, to like actually to actually support it. Yeah, so those are just some of the things that come off the top of my head. Not a lot of people know about this other effort that I've been working on, but I'll just mention it because it's something really near and dear to my heart. Is I'm part of an advocacy group to change the name of UC Hastings School of Law. UC Hastings is named after Seranus Hastings, and I'm part of an effort along with the Yuki Indians who were impacted by Seranus Hastings' actions against them. And we've been advocating before the state assembly to have the name of the school change. It needs to go through the state assembly because UC Hastings the name is within the California Education Code. And I'm really happy to say that there's a bill now that is going to change the name of the law school, and we're pretty confident that it will pass.
Excellent.
As well as the restorative justice measures for the Yuki Indians that come with that bill.
Interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm going to talk to you about that later. I read a bit about it in the paper, but I didn't get a good understanding.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So the next question, it goes without saying, when it comes to education, our community is passionate, opinionated, and organized. Name 1 to 2 examples where you were able to stand for and hold your convictions in the face of strong opposition.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I feel like that in many ways is I'm like, when am I not facing headwinds?
You should have a few examples.
I know. I you know, and it's like, oh boy. Well, let me talk a little bit about my work at Golden Gate University, because I haven't mentioned that, but I haven't gone into some detail about that.
And where's that? Is that Golden Gate is in San Francisco?
Yeah, Golden Gate University in San Francisco.
Okay.
So I was appointed to be the dean of online education before COVID, and so let's just say that online education, at least in the legal setting and legal institutions, it wasn't really heard of, and I think there were, kind of the sentiment that, it's not desired. Brick and mortar education, that's how we educate, that's the highest quality, and we can't possibly do what we do, teach students online. And so that was major headwinds from, kind of just from a cultural, perspective. And so I was appointed to look at whether we can, and if the answer is yes, to bring in a JD degree that utilize online technology, essentially an online JD degree. And we ended up with a hybrid model, okay? And the reason why we wanted to do that is to increase access. GGU serves adult students, right? And so many of them, for whatever reason, it might be second career, they might be caregivers at home, they have full-time jobs during the day. They can't go to a brick and mortar traditional model. So we really wanted to increase the access to a wonderful degree, like a law degree, to more people. And also to people beyond the geography. Okay, and it all makes sense now post-COVID, but before COVID, it was really, kind of just mind-blowing. So there were resistance from faculty who were used to doing it a certain way. It was also there was also some resistance with respect to just administration, because I had to work with different departments, right, to design the nuts and bolts. And so long story short was that we did get the program designed, and it took about 2 years. And I felt like initially, the first year, it was very, very strong headwinds. It was just me kind of, leading this effort. But over time, when you start listening to people, when you start building interpersonal relationships with them, when you listen to department heads and hear what their challenges are, right, you start to realize, none of us are really against each other. There's a commonality. The commonality is the student, and the commonality is that we want better opportunities for the student.
Absolutely.
And so you find that commonality with the different stakeholders, with divergent interests to move that goal along. So I'm really proud to say that we launched the program. The school launched the program this year, and it's doing really well. Should I give you another example? Let's move. Maybe we can move on. Yeah,
it's up to you. We have time.
We have time. Okay,
but that's good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm ready to move on. But
okay.
Thank you.
So our fifth question: as a board member, you're accountable for the overall success of the district. Share examples of how you've provided effective governance to an organization. Effective governance to an organization. Okay,
yeah, thank you so much.
Sure.
On the first organization that comes to mind is I'm on the board of directors at East Bay Children's Law Offices. This was the same organization that hired me as a foster youth attorney. And so it's where I began my career as a child advocate. So I'm really familiar with the organization and the work and the importance of the work. Being on the board of directors, and it's a relatively small board, and so we really kind of get in there and really get involved. You have to kind of put on a different hat. Okay, and so while the child advocacy, part of understanding the work is really important, as a board director, you have to make sure that the organization is financially solvent. You have to ensure that, the funding is going to the right places. You have to ensure that the organization is going to be viable, not just today, but in the years to come. And so when we regularly look at, not only our budget, but when we look at the programs and the data supporting the programs throughout the year, then when it comes to making those budgetary proposals and final decision, then we have we have the evidence, the facts that we need to make a sound decision. And so that is also true for the work that I've done on the school site council as well.
Okay.
That was really eye-opening because some of the data that we looked at with respect to the gap of the achievement gap between groups of students were frankly really, it was really disturbing. And however, even with that, we look at all the programs that we were supporting, and everything on the face of it seemed to be doing fine. We did, for some, we didn't have really kind of too much data with respect to quantitative data or qualitative data, like how is it going in the classroom? What's the actual experience like for the teacher, for the student? And so I felt like there was a disconnect. Like we had these big gaps in some of these areas, but then we had these programs that all seemed kind of fine, and so that also showed me, that we need more information, perhaps different ways of evaluating programs and in classroom experiences such, so that we can make better decisions. And so, yeah, I would say on the school site council was an opportunity where I felt like I had to put on a different hat than a parent hat. And a different hat than a student hat. I had to really think about, what is going to work well for all of our students, and to ensure that, whatever that we're funding is actually going towards advancing a goal. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. What is your vision of a successful graduate profile for BUSD?
That is so exciting.
Yeah, great question.
That is a great question. You guys are really good at coming up with really good questions. Oh, I am so excited by this one. This is why I'm doing this work. This is why I'm doing this. Education is social justice. And in all of my work, whether it's representing a child or to working with a college student, there is one truth that I have discovered. It is that young people can do more than we think. They really can. Whatever we think, multiply that. And sometimes in the process of doing it, they surprise even themselves. I've had students, some of my past clients, who have said, nobody has ever said they believed in me. But I've had law students say, I'm not doing as well as other students, but you're asking me to do 15 essays and you're only giving the other people 5, right? But then when you support them in their growth and you are a coach on the sidelines to their journey, what you end up discovering, and sometimes what they end up discovering, is that they can actually do more than they think. And I believe the adults in the room, our job is to clear the way for them, because they can do the rest. And what does that mean? It means that if a student needs support, we have to provide the support. If a child needs more advanced courses, we have to provide that. Okay? Also, it means bring amazing opportunities to our students. I've been on the campaign trail for months and months now. I've heard from some graduates who have said, I didn't even know this career existed. One of them is in robotics now. And I said, oh, did you learn that in high school? How'd you hear about that? And he's like, I only learned about it well after high school, and that would have changed my outlook had I known that the math that I was studying in class actually served a greater purpose than just calculations, right? It's a portal to, something really amazing, okay? And so I share all of that because my vision for the graduate is a graduate who has a strong identity of who they are, okay, cultural and racial identity, and who you are as a person, and your family identity, is really important. And so I envision a graduate with a very strong identity, a graduate with the skill to be able to conquer whatever it is that they choose. And I also envision a graduate who has very strong mental wellness, so that they have the tools they need to conquer whatever it is whatever hardship that it is that they face in life. Yeah, identity, skill, and wellness.
That's why we do it.
That's why we do it.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question. That one's pretty deep. The school board makes, it is the right question. The school board makes many important decisions, from hiring the superintendent to passing resolutions and approving budgets. Name an example of how you have been able to collaborate in order to come to an important decision.
I think collaboration is one of my strengths. Like, as I mentioned before, I think about some of the pretty significant things that I've been a part of. They have all involved different stakeholders with divergent interests coming around an identification of a common goal. In my foster youth work, I was the voice of the child. The caregivers also had their representative and their interests, and sometimes those interests were divergent from my client, the child's interest. And then we had social services, which is a enormous bureaucracy, and they have legitimate interests to ensure that those interests are prioritized. And so oftentimes when you have kind of these three, very kind of different interests, how do you get to a result? And I had to really lean into my collaboration skills. Much of what kind of happens is the relationships that you build outside of the meetings and outside of the court proceeding. Is the relationship and the trust that you build with people. And it sounds simple, but I don't think it's much more complicated than that. So before you ask somebody for something, and to help support a resolution or to support something that you're supporting, you have to have had the relationship with them before that, right? So the first phone call from you isn't you asking for something. And so if I got this job, one of the first things I'm going to do is get to know my colleagues, not as board members, but as human beings. What do they care about? Why are they doing this, right? What are some of their priorities? What are some of their struggles? Right? Where do they see the opportunities are at? I want to get to know the superintendent as well and ask those same questions so that we get to know each other as people. That's going to lend to better collaboration when we need to get the work done. It doesn't mean we're going to be able to agree on everything, but it means that there's going to be a level of trust that even if we disagreed on this one thing, okay, we trust the intention and where we're coming from. And in government and in politics, that trust is broken. That trust is broken. And for me, I would be coming into the job knowing that and wanting to and working really hard to repair that trust. Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know if I actually gave you some examples, but
No, I think that...
okay,
yeah.
that's okay. Let me know if I didn't answer the question.
But are you good? to move on.
Yeah, I think I am. And if I think of another collaboration example, I'll let you know. Yeah, but the primary one that comes to mind was in my work as a foster youth attorney. It really required a high level of collaboration to get anything done. Because if you say, you know what, we're not going to agree, or I don't agree with you, I don't want to listen to you, and then you litigated the issue, the risk that you take is that your client may lose. And taking that risk, you better make sure that it was a risk that you needed to take. And so instead, what I ended up doing was really try to negotiate a result.
And I'm sure in some of those committees, district committees you've been on, it's been needed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
So from COVID testing to key cards, new business processes and technology can make an enormous difference in students and families' experience and even safety. Provide examples of how you've led innovation in an organization, including sharing best practices and introducing new technology.
Okay.
Do you want me to repeat that?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah,
no problem.
I understand. Yeah.
From COVID testing to key cards, new business processes and technology can make an enormous difference in students and families' experience and even safety. So now the question is, or what I'd like for you to do for me is to provide examples of how you've led innovation in an organization, including sharing best practices and introducing new technology.
Okay.
That's a mouthful, right?
It's so important.
Yes.
Well, let me just tell you about just very recently my kind of experience in just getting my daughter ready to begin middle school. Because that kind of comes to mind the need that something simple, relatively feels like I don't want to say it's simple to do, but it seems like a kind of a foundational request, nothing too crazy, to how it can really make a huge impact in a child and a family's experience. So I was trying to sign up for after school, and like many families, and I had a really hard time, to be honest, kind of navigating the system. And it's not anybody's fault per se. It is just, it's kind of the system that we have, right? And so I had a really hard time, first of all, knowing where to go. And then when I finally did sign up, I thought I signed up. I wasn't sure whether I pressed everything correctly, to ensure that we are signed up, right? And I didn't really have a lot of information about, what does this mean now? Like next step, are we in? Are we not in? Are we on the wait list? And then what are the next steps? And so I just give that as an example of, I think that technology. We're in Silicon Valley, and and I'm positive we have the resources, the means, the how-to, right, to make some of these, kind of platforms more easily accessible to our families. And it will enable us to communicate, right? Because I'm sure the district has all the knowledge, right? So it's not like it's anything new for them, but it will also help the district communicate everything that they know on their end, to families. And I think that would be huge, even just, kind of sign up mechanisms and, having an app that's, perhaps easily, navigable, and also making sure that families are aware of it. Sometimes one group of parents are aware, another group are not using it. And so, kind of just getting everybody on board. I am really passionate about educational technology, having been the Associate Dean of Online Education. Also, you don't need to have any fancy roles to know, having gone through COVID, right, that educational technology can make a big impact if it's done well. And so I think one of the lessons that we before we kind of charge forward to this post-COVID world, we should really pause and think about what are some of the lessons learned from COVID. One of those lessons to me is the power of technology. And it has the power to access more students. It has the power to personalize the experience. What we see in graduate school is that it also has the power to make the learning more rigorous. Because when it's personalized to you, or you can't advance from one point to another until you demonstrate competency, then it really kind of pushes you, right, to acquiring those skills, to self-assess whether those skills have been gained before you get to move on. So bring in some of those, designing a curriculum, a graduate school program, law degree curriculum in which we use educational technology was my job. And so I wouldn't say I know the answer, but I would say, that was something that we deeply looked into to as part of making that program, the hybrid online JD program, both experiential as well as really high quality. I also have another idea that I want to share.
Sure.
And I don't know if this is already happening, so I'll just say that if it is, then great. Is that I've been thinking a lot around how to support young people with mental health needs. And even sometimes just daily needs. Maybe it's just a crisis that you're in, or some stress that you're feeling, or something that might come and go. I have some high school volunteers on my team, and they have shared with me that they love the health center at Berkeley High. They really love it. Their only kind of wish is that there would be more counseling, right? Because sometimes they have to wait a bit before they get to talk to somebody. So I really want to support kind of bolstering, whatever that they're doing. They're well loved and they're doing really well. So I want to bolster that. But one idea I had was, what about some sort of a texting platform? And I know there are like privacy issues and all of that. There's always issues we have to sort out, legal issues and all sorts of logistical issues that we have sorted out. But imagine like young people, like what do they do? If you look at what they do, right? They're like, they're texting, they're on their phones, just like we are. And so what if we had like a mental health, like a crisis hotline, but like a text line, right? Where they can just access a professional on the other side, right? To walk them through a situation, to provide them some guidance, right? On a moment's notice. And so it's a project I have in mind that I would love to look into to see if it's being done.
Oh, and I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure that they have secure ways to make that happen. Technology, right? So we have about 15 minutes and 2 more questions, so we're right on schedule. Okay. So often the school board passes resolutions passes a resolution that directs the district to do something new or different. But sometimes implementation is incomplete or doesn't even happen. Name an example of how you've held a large organization accountable to its goals.
Yeah, I have seen that at the district as well. And holding an organization accountable to its goals means staying true to those goals and always holding that up, that this is what we agreed to, right? And that we passed a resolution, or this was approved, or whatever it was, this is what we agreed to, right? And so to never kind of lose sight of that, to constantly remind the stakeholders that this is the goal. You also have to have a mechanism in place for constant communication around how far along we are to reaching that goal. And so constant communication as well as some sort of a process to evaluate whether not whether the program necessarily is working, because it might be the goal is to develop the program, right? But to evaluate, are you meeting your deliverables? And so, when I designed the hybrid online JD degree, it was going to launch on such and such date and year. It had to happen. Now, of course, we can always delay it, but really with delay is a cost. The opportunity cost of delay are students not being served, are, other costs that, really, it's the last option for us to delay the project. So when you have a goal with a specific deadline, then you have to have that mechanism in place to make sure that it's met. You have to have really strong leadership, and it can't just be one person. You really need strong leadership on the board, and you need really, really strong leadership at the district level. And you also need leadership on the community level, right? Where you have these different stakeholders who feel just as urgent, that this goal is met. So I would say keeping everybody accountable to that goal, reminding them the importance of that goal, making sure that the stakeholders are all involved in a series of a work plan or process, check-in, accountability measures to ensure that things are moving along. And at every point when it's not moved along, or something is supposed to be funded, or something is supposed to happen and is not happening, right, to ask, why isn't it happening? Yeah, but one person even, can't do it. So it really requires a team of people, but from their different standpoints, asking for the same thing.
Well, I hope everyone's listening to this response, because that's exactly what needs to be done. Thank you for that. So we have 10 more minutes, and this is the last question.
Okay.
So we're right on schedule. Board members tend to be leaders, both within the school district and community at large, of course, right? What are examples in your work where you were able to improve team cohesiveness and or build community relationships?
I'll mention something that not a lot of people know about me, unless they know me, is that I've been a fitness coach for the last...
I didn't know that about you.
I keep saying 15 years, but I've been saying that for like at least 5 years. And so I think it's somewhere more like 20 years. Wow. But, building community and bringing people together is what I do. It's what I enjoy. And being a part of people's success. I have found more joy in life when you're part of somebody's success, as opposed to where the earlier part of my life, which is about reaching kind of my own goals, right? My own success was the primary goal. But when I started doing fitness coaching, as well as my foster youth work and all of the subsequent work after that, I realized quickly that actually you can derive so much more satisfaction when you support other people's successes. And so with that in mind, that's the frame of mind that I bring when I bring people together, is that this, and I've been telling people on the campaign trail too, is that this isn't about me. It shouldn't be about me. If any elected leader is not going to listen, but is going to tell you about his or her platform, what they want, that's a sign to you to run the other way, right? They should be asking, the first question is, how can I serve your family? How can I serve your child? What have your experience been, right? And I've been doing that work since last year. I've now, I think, talked to hundreds of families since June of last year on Zoom and in person. And so I carry their hopes, their dreams, their struggles with me. And to be a strong community leader, you have to understand that you are in service of others. And so whether I'm a fitness coach or on the school board or volunteering in the community, that's the perspective I come from, that I am in service of you. And you are my partner we are partners to effectuating change. Yeah.
Well, I am so happy that this new organization has decided to do this, because getting to know the candidates is what we as a community really need.
Yeah.
As we are making our decisions in November. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time, for sharing you with the community. And I wish you all the best with your candidacy. This is really exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yay. Thank you.